Hello guys, I am Aravind Kanuratna Sabhabadi, CSE student from SN College of Engineering. I will be doing a small screencast on the two tasks that were assigned to me for the application of Lean Kloud in a summer internship. So let me begin. I have built an REST API as per the requirement of the first question. I'll walk through the code and then later on I will also show the working model, and later on I'll also show the CSV file parser which brings out each subject topper and the class toppers as well. I'll be going through the time complexity as well. I'll try to make it as quick as possible. So let's begin. So as per the requirement, we'll have to use the code base from the official documentation of Flask-RESTPlus. Here they have used a dictionary to implement. I will be using a database, and as per the requirement of the question, I have not used any ORMs as such. I'll be using only my native DB API for SQLite. So let me begin. So as it, like any other application begins, Flask application begins, I have begun my Flask application, and then I have initiated an API object creation there, and then I have also included the namespace so that it'll start a documentation as such. I've also have two parsers, that is models, to expect payloads and marshal with this model so that we can maintain uniformity in our JSON data. So let me begin. As per the documentation example, we'll have a to-dos endpoint with just a slash and also a path parameter integer. So with the slash ending to-dos endpoint, we'll have two methods, get and post. The get will return 200 on success with the list of all the to-dos, and post will send a 201 OK created message status code after creating a record there in our database. Here for the path parameter with the integer, we'll have a get method which will fetch one particular record, and a delete method which will delete that particular record, and put that updates the whole record as such, and patch just to change the status of the record. So let me explain each of the methods for each functionality of each method. So for the get all, I just have a database connection, and I started a cursor and executed select query so that I can fetch all the records from the database and parse each record as a dictionary using the convert function that I've written as a static method, and rather appending it to a list, and I will marshal the list with this dictionary that I've created. This is in synchronization with the model that I've created earlier. So get all is just to fetch a particular ID. So there's nothing much to change there, just that ID. But if we can't find the ID, we will have to give a 404 error. To do does not exist, and I'll go for the next one, create. I validate the payload prior to connecting with the DB, and if the payload verification fails, I send a bad request status code with 400 and also an appropriate error message so that they can rectify their payload. And then I'll connect with my database and execute the insert. And also, since we are generating the ID from our end, I'll supply the response as the entire record so that the user can look into the ID and use it later. Um, on With that being said, I'll move to update just updates the entire record as a whole. So again, just like the previous function, I have also checked for the bad request 400, and appropriate messages are being printed as such. And then later on, the database connection comes into play, where I've updated all the three fields for that particular ID that he has supplied in the path parameter. And if there were no changes made, that is, if the ID does not exist, I publish a 404 error. For the update status, it's just the status that I need to check, and since we have a check constraint on what the status can look like, the not started, in progress, or complete, I'll be checking that as well. This has been done for the other two functions as well. Later on, I'll update the status using the ID. So since the ID is the primary key, as we all can identify by now, then we'll also say if the ID isn't found. That is, when we select the changes on the database, and if it were to return 0, then we will obviously say that there wasn't a to-do found in that particular ID. we can do a delete as the same, similar to the other functionalities, wherein I'll be deleting a record and checking if there were any changes in the database. If that were there, then I would give a server response on my server side alone for my knowledge to know that there was a record deleted, but there will be no response to the user. I repeat, no response to the user when he does a patch or a put or a delete method. So I'll move on to the other endpoints, that is your due endpoint, which has query parameters. So your query parameters here is the due date. The query parameters are the one which are followed by the question mark. So moving on further, I go ahead and then check the query parameter, that is if it were a properly formatted date string, then I would pass it on to my SQL query and check fetch all the to do tasks that weren't finished, that is whichever is due on a particular day for that matter. If it were finished, it wouldn't be due. So I'll append all those records into a list of dictionaries. um, so each dictionary will be marshaled with and then will be printed. So your overdue is the next endpoint that we'll have to discuss now. Overdue is the one wherein it is overdue then the current date. That's how I've comprehended it. I have got the current date from the today library in Python, and I have passed it as a in the prepared statement. So all the dates that are lesser than today's date will be overdue, that is that have not been finished and have their due date prior to today, so they are all overdue tasks. So that's how I have appended each JSON material into the tasks. Then later on I have also marshaled them all and posted it back using the 200 status code. And next is the finish, so I print all the tasks that were finished. That is if the status were equal to finish, I fetch all of them, and just like the others, I again publish them as a list of JSON dictionary, JSON objects to the user. So I think we'll get going and start the Swagger UI. Let me run this program. Give me a minute. Now that I have begun this, I'll open my Swagger UI. Yeah. So this is the documentation, automatic documentation I was talking about earlier. We could see the models in how it were expecting the to do with the description, due date, and status required, and ID is not required because we are generating that. And to do for the patch, that is just to say, change the status as per the requirement of a method for just that purpose. So to dos will have each, we'll go one by one. So get, I'll try this out. I'll just simply execute. I can see that I have already created a few records in my database. It fetches all of them. Uh, so now let's try creating one of the one record. So let's use the post, and let's check if this is getting executed as such. It says that your date is not being properly formatted, so we'll have to go and format the date first. So let's say we are executing a task today, and let's say I want to do my homework. Yeah, so let's say do homework. And status, you might want to see the validation. I'll show it for one so that it will be, yeah, so you see the bad request, it's not among the not started, in progress, and complete. So my request validation is being, payload validation is being done here. So let's say not started maybe. Yeah, so that being said, I'll try to execute it. Yeah, so you have the 201 server response. That means it is being created. Now we can note down the ID so that we can test it. 6, right? So let's go for the path parameter in the other get query and give out 6 and see if we have obtained the same. Yeah, that's there. We have done that. And let me give an invalid ID like 100 or something. Yeah, it says to do 100 does not exist with a 404 error. That is not found error. So now that we have done that, let's try deleting, or let's try first changing the status of that particular ID before we begin this delete or put. So let's say I have maybe in progress, right? So I have started it, so it might be in progress. I started doing my homeworks, so that, and then I'll go for 6. I'll try executing it. Yeah, I have no response. That is just my status code. My status code says it's all good to go, so I'll take it as a okay there. And then maybe if you want to view that it is being changed, I'll go again and do a get request there. Oh, sorry, my bad. We'll have to do 6. Yeah, so in progress is being affected there. So now that we have done patch, let's go for put. Let's say it wasn't, let's do a specification there. Maybe it was a do computer science homework or something for that matter. So that we'll have to do a change. And then maybe say, we have changed our date from not today, maybe say 2 days from now and 20th, and status is in progress. As far as put is concerned, you'll have to supply the entire record as payload because we can't do partial. That is a part of the patch and not the put. I'm doing all the status codes and all the payload verification and all in synchronous with the HTTP protocol. So it'll be like that. With that being said, I forgot to give the ID. So yeah, it's 6. So I've done that. Again, 204 says that it's all good to go, and the change is being reflected there. If you want to look at if I have if this really the payload has been affected in get, I mean in the database we can use a get request there, and then we can check yes, as I change now the 20th May and do CS homework is being reflected there. All good there. Let's delete it then. Yeah, why not? We'll delete it. We'll delete it. Yeah, now that 204 is come, it's deleted. Let's try deleting it once again. To do does not exist. So as I expected and as anyone would expect, it was resilient to sending the same ID again. Let's try getting it. Why not? Again, it doesn't exist. So that's been done. So earlier I said that I have a couple of tasks in my database. So as per, you can take a look at this task, so that on execution of the next few queries, we will get to know which ones are overdue, which ones are due, and which ones are finished. So now that you have viewed all this, let's go and execute the others. So your get due. So due accepts a query parameter. Let's say we need to know all the tasks that were completed yesterday, or whatever were scheduled on yesterday. The due date was on yesterday and I have not finished for that matter, or something of that sort. So yeah, there was three processes that were in progress that I have not completed any of them. So it weren't finished means it was still due to that date. So yeah, that's being executed. Let's give a wrong date for that matter. Yeah, no due to dos on. I mean, sorry, I gave a correct date formatting, but on a different day, so it shows no due to dos. Let's give a wrong, say BB or something of that sort, and let's see if it is resilient to it. Yes, it's a bad date formatting. That error message is being printed. I expected that. Okay, overdue ones. So that is they're past their to due date as of today. So as of today, the 3 tasks that we viewed yesterday are being overdue. So are there any finished tasks? Let's view that using this get method. Oh yeah, there is one. Complete task from Lean Kloud. Yeah, so that's been done. That's finished. So yeah. So as far as my API is concerned, REST API, I've built everything, and this is using the Swagger implementation exposure of OpenUI, and then the two models I have shown as well. So let me move on to the next part of the task, that is to parse the data analysis part. Yeah, let me begin. So yeah, I've imported the entire document here, and then I have gone for opening the CSV there, and I've also skipped the first header so that I can move on to my each record parsing, and I have also gone for each subject topper, so that I have created a list for that, and I've created a list for finding the toppers of the class. So the main content of the program comes here, wherein we'll be running a for loop for each particular row in the CSV file, so that we can find who has done what. I mean, the each mark obtained can be compared with the existing maximum assumed maximums that we have. So here I run a for loop. This for loop is mainly to compare all the subject toppers assumed marks with the current records actual marks, and then accordingly append. So if it were equal, just like any other case, we would be appending to the subject toppers list, and if it were greater, then we would be replacing with the new one. And this goes for each subject. So as this will show, this len of row will be for each subject, right? So we do that, and then we move on to the toppers. So for the toppers, we go and run a small loop to check if the current mark is greater than any of the other toppers that we have declared as having the higher mark, and then I'm getting the appropriate index to insert this. So on doing that, we pop the guy in the array that has the least mark and insert the new guy with the more mark than any of those three guys, and insert into the proper position using the j+1. We've tracked the index with the j variable. So later on, we just go for formatting and printing as per the requirement of the question. Let's go ahead and run this as well. So I run this code. Yeah, so this is the result. As you can see, uh, there are uh, there are physics and chemistry wherein two students have scored the same score of 99. So I've accounted for that as well and not just printing one. Mine is resilient in the best students as well. I tried for 5 rankers, and then there were I think, if I'm not wrong, in the fourth rank there are two people who share the same rank, so those both will be printed. All right, so with this being said, that is the data parsing part as well. So let's go for the time complexity. As I explained in my documentation part, I'll again go through it using the code here. So your for loop, that is reading each line of the reader, yeah, that will read each student's individual record, and that will run assumption that we take n student records are there, so that'll run for n times. And this for loop, which parses the mark or checks against and compares for each person, that will run m times. That is for m subjects, so it will run m times, and compares each mark, and if it were equal, append; if it weren't, then it replace. So that's how it goes there. We also store the name of the people, so that we'll have to return the name at the end as per the question's requirement. So if it were k toppers, that is k rankers, from the first ranker to second ranker to third ranker, so k ranks up to k ranks, we'll require an array of k size so that we could append or confirm or check or compare against each person, each student in that array to the current student's total mark. So total is being calculated using the total variable here. So for each record, the total will be set to 0, and add each subject's mark to the total, and then compare against the three existing toppers of the k length array there. So it will run for k. So this loop, that is on the first inner loop, runs m times. The second while loop here goes for k times, and the entire loop runs for n records. So nk plus nm. That's the time complexity of this particular problem that I have provided here and explained as well. So thank you for patiently going through my screencast. I hope to get the internship. Thank you for providing me this opportunity to learn the REST API and getting some knowledge or idea of the CSV as well. Thank you.